Hello everybody, it's Peter McLaughlin with BlueSky Hypnosis, and welcome to Friday Live at 5. Today we're going to be talking about I am safe to lose weight. And before we get into all of that, I just want to apologize for last week, especially to the regulars. I was trying a new software that was purported to be able to stream to Facebook and YouTube at the same time, and they had made some changes. I'm not much of a technical person, if you haven't gathered that already. And long and short of it is I ended up doing it twice. I did it once at 5 o'clock. I had no idea if anybody was on there. I think some of you guys were there. And then I did it again at about 6:15 or 6:10, I think it was. Anyway, apologize for that. Hope today goes much more smoothly. I got rid of the old software and I'm back to the old way of doing things. So keeping the fingers crossed. For the new people, please be sure, if you have questions or comments, to put those in the chat section. It really makes this way more interesting. Way more interesting, I think, for the people who are watching, and certainly way more interesting for me. It was really weird last week just talking into a black hole. So please keep those questions and comments coming. And also, if you have suggestions for future Friday Live at 5s, please submit those as well. Send those in to me because I definitely consider everything that comes in. Lots of great ideas have come. I've already done some of those ideas. The one that I'm doing next week, we're going to be talking about it, and it was suggested by one of the regulars, Dara. So again, thanks for being here. Today we're talking about I am safe to lose weight. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. I think a lot of people are familiar with that concept of a subconscious need for protection. And I just want to get rid of this one and put up this handy dandy one that I made. Put up this picture of a castle. So castle walls, right? Why do we build castle walls? Well, it's to protect us from enemies, real and imagined, that live outside of the castle walls. And the only reason you build castle walls is because you fear that something horrible is going to happen. And why do you fear that? Maybe because threats have been made, or maybe because horrible things have happened in the past. Well, for a lot of people, at least the clients I've worked with over the last 14 years, sadly, shockingly, too often, it's the case where especially women have been abused at some point in their life, often sexually. And that abuse has led to a subconscious need to protect themselves. Now, this is not something that I'm saying is a conscious thing, like they wake up in the morning and they think, oh, I want to gain some extra weight, so I have this layer between me and the outside world. Or I want to gain this weight so that I don't look perhaps as attractive and I won't be as appealing to would-be attackers. No, this is happening in the subconscious mind. And it's key to understand that the role of your subconscious mind is to protect you. And if you understand that that's its role, what could feel like, and I've talked about this in the past, what could feel like self-sabotage, right? You get on a diet, everything's going well, you're starting to lose the weight, you're exercising, everything's going fine, and then all of a sudden, it's like a switch is flicked. And you slide back to the old way of being. Maybe even it gets worse. The way I think of this, and please take everything I say with a grain of salt, because I'm a life coach and I'm a hypnotherapist. I'm not a licensed social worker or a psychologist or a doctor. If you have health issues, serious concerns, talk to those folks first, okay? Take everything I say with a grain of salt. Everything I'm saying comes from my discipline and my experience of working with people over the past 14 years. But if you think of your subconscious mind as trying to protect you, in other words, it's the architect that's building these castle walls to keep you safe, then it's easier not to get angry at yourself. It's easier to understand that this is almost like a frightened child, your subconscious mind, that's creating this response, and the response is based on something. Something happened in the past to create that response, and therefore it's trying to protect you. Even if it's doing something at a time when there's no more danger. Even if it's doing something that when you look at the results and you're just horrified, you don't like what you see. As I said, it feels like self-sabotage. I don't think it is. I think it's this part of you trying to protect you. So part of what we're going to talk about today is, okay, if we understand that concept of the subconscious mind is trying to protect me, it's trying to keep me safe, How can I actually feel safe, or probably better yet, communicate the reality of that safety to my subconscious mind so it doesn't have to keep behaving in the same way and keep producing all of the weight that I don't want and I don't need anymore? All right, I'm going to dive into these, into some of these questions and comments that are coming in, which is awesome. It's awesome, and see if there's some things that we can tackle right away. People talking to each other, which is fabulous. I love seeing that. So lots of folks that recognize you, like Legal Eagle 44 and AW and Shannon Marie, and I saw somebody talk about Dara, so I'm going to assume you're here too, Dara, which is awesome. Marie Hogan, Estelle, fantastic. And Shannon Marie has a question here, I think. And what she says is fear of losing weight connected to child abuse, sexual, or being looked at sexually and not knowing how to hold that dark energy? I would say it could be both. Because again, anything that creates a threat in your subconscious mind, it could be an actual act of being attacked, or it could theoretically be a threatening experience, something that scares you, right? So let's say that you're in an inner city someplace and you're walking through a rough neighborhood and it's nighttime and somebody comes after you. And maybe they have a weapon and they're threatening you, and then all of a sudden a police officer or somebody else intervenes and the threat goes away. That doesn't mean your subconscious mind doesn't come up on guard, right? Of course it's going to. You're going to move into a stress response. Heart's going to be pounding. Adrenaline and cortisol is going to be flowing through your bloodstream. Now, we don't know, because individuals are different, if that incident, if you're gonna come down off that fear and then kind of go back to life as normal, or if your subconscious mind's gonna go, wait a second, that was really dangerous. Now, the subconscious mind is an associating making mechanism. So it can associate different stimuli with that particular fear. So the next time you see a knife, even if it's a kitchen knife, you may get a little bit of a hit that probably we would describe as PTSD. It could be the ethnicity of the person that was attacking you, or the gender, or the height, or some other aspect of them, like the quality of their voice. But yeah, that's a really good point. It doesn't actually have to be an attack where there's physical contact. It could be the threat, especially if the threat occurs multiple times. There's some other aspects of this as well too, and we're gonna be diving into those a little bit later in the talk today. Just want to see if there's anything else here. So Tamara W is saying, this concept is ancient. Thank you for voicing it. You're welcome, Tamara. Tamara, I can't tell you how many times that this has come up in the practice. And you realize at a certain point that probably all of us, once we get to it's probably even 20, 25 years old, are carrying around a fair amount of emotional trauma from our past. And what kind of looks like trauma to an adult from the outside, and what doesn't look like trauma to an adult from the outside may be interpreted completely differently by that smaller child, for example. So, I've had people in my practice, when they go back to a trauma, they're standing in the crib and they're crying, they're screaming because maybe their diaper needs to be changed, or they just feel lonely, or they're scared, or they had a bad dream, and no one's coming. And to a parent, they may have been taking a nap and not heard this. They may not have even known that happened, and yet the child could take that in as a trauma. So yeah, really, I'm glad you made that comment, and definitely you're welcome. Let's see what we got here. Okay, Sandra von Busch says, I was being sexually abused as early as 4 years old. Stepfather till the age of 17. It sucked because my mother knew and she did nothing. Yeah, this is the kind of thing that I definitely hear a lot in this practice. And it's, even though I've been doing this for 14 years, it still never fails to create sadness, and maybe even a little bit of shock that it happens to so many people. And the way I look at this is that abuse is like getting hit by arrows, like a bow and arrow. And it's almost like you have, the way I look at this, it's almost like you have one or more invisible arrows sticking out of you, and that you're trying to go through your life with these wounds. And you could imagine if you had an arrow sticking out of your shoulder and it didn't hit a vital part of your body, like an artery or an organ or something, and you didn't worry about an infection. Of course, that would be an issue, but you could sort of go through your life. You would learn how to adapt to having this arrow sticking out of your shoulder. But having the arrow sticking out of your shoulder would clearly cause other problems. The pain and the certain things that you maybe wouldn't do, or the certain ways that you would react in particular situations. And I always think we need to find those invisible arrows using hypnotic regression. So a person goes into hypnosis and you give the instructions to the subconscious mind to go back in time to the origin of that particular wound. Because there could be multiple iterations, sadly, of the same kind of wound. What we really want, what I always think about, is we want the first one, because that's generally where limiting beliefs, for example, were created. Now, a limiting belief could be, I need to have all this extra weight to protect me from an uncertain and hostile world. Now, that might have made a lot of sense when a person was, a child. But as they get older and they move away from the people that did this to them, and they're bigger and stronger, and they're around other loving people, that we could say perhaps is no longer a threat. And yet the subconscious mind is still locked in the past. So we'd want to find, using hypnotic regression, the origin of that wound. We would want to heal it where it resides. So we all know that concept of the inner child, which I think is a super powerful concept. In my practice, the inner child can be literally an inner child, or it can be you at a younger age, not a child, or it could be you in a past lifetime, which we will talk about a little bit later, because a past lifetime can actually influence your present life. We want to find that earlier iteration of you and help her to heal in a hypnotic state. Now, the key with this is that everything that's being driven, so emotional eating, for example, stressful eating, choosing comfort food, all of these phrases suggest stress. Stress suggests a threat. If we can help that younger version of you understand she's no longer in danger, she's safe to relax, she's safe to eat normal amounts of food and healthy food, she's safe to exercise, and she's safe to lose weight. Once she's satisfied, that younger version of you, we can integrate her with you, and this has the net effect of changing your subconscious programming. And for those of you who haven't heard me talk about this before, if you think about your mind as being the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, the conscious mind represents only about 3% of your brain's processing power. You have 20 to 90,000 thoughts a day, only 3% of which you would have any awareness of. The rest of it is all going on down beneath the surface of the water, like an iceberg. You can see that little part on top, even though it might look big, but underneath is orders of magnitude larger. That's where we want to make that change. Because the conventional way of losing weight relies a lot on discipline and willpower. And willpower only works when you're focusing directly on it. And even then, sometimes we waver or falter, right? Those deeper urges, those deeper powerful urges take over. So if we can change that deeper programming that is pushing you in the direction of gaining weight, that is linked to this old trauma, that's where we can really make inroads. That's where we can really help you in a huge way. So I guess this is probably a good time to put up this one quote. So today, a person, actually one of my clients, sent me an email, and this is just a very small quote from a much larger email. And what she was talking about here, she said, I would have reacted much differently to the situation. Now, something happened at her job. And she said that in the past, she always would have responded with anger. I would have reacted differently to the situation and been angry about it, and then gone and compensated for my anger and my frustration by eating, but not today. So she has obviously been able to change some of that deeper programming through the work that we've done in her subconscious mind. And that has had the net effect of being in a situation that what she's describing would normally be what we would call a trigger, right? Like pull a trigger of a gun. If that gun is loaded and the safety's off, it's gonna fire, right? So the work that we do is almost like unloading the gun, taking the ammunition out of it and putting the safety on. So then when you pull the trigger, nothing happens. That's what she's describing. And it's all based upon this, what I'm calling this mental subconscious programming. And it kind of makes sense to me that if we get at the deeper, or call it the deepest level, then the triggers will now be benign. And the person, in this case, this client, will have more control over her own life. She went on to talk about making brownies for people at work. And she had a bite of one of them and just thought, I don't need this. And for her, this is sort of revolutionary. She told me she's never been able to do that before. And it sounds miraculous, and on some level it really is. But on another level, to me, it's perfectly logical. If you heal that old wound, if you find that old arrow and you remove it, which can hurt, by the way, pulling an arrow out isn't a walk on the beach. It's painful, just like taking a splinter out of your toe. It hurts. But we all know it's got to come out of there, because if it doesn't, it's going to be infected, and every time you step on it, it's going to hurt. And you're going to have to adjust your life around that splinter. But if you go through the process and you deal with a little bit of pain by digging it out, then the wound can heal, and then everything is transformed. Now you're sort of back to normal in that sense. And I guess that kind of, and I guess I'm going to go into some of the comments here and see if we've got anything that we might want to jump into here, because this really is the coolest part, at least for me. Okay, so here we have WWG1WGA369. I was to do this before COVID-19. I started meditation and it's working for me very well. Fantastic. Congratulations to you. Obviously, meditation is of huge benefit to a lot of people. I guess I would use this as an opportunity just to point out that hypnosis, meditation, and deep prayer all would put a person into the same state that a hypnotist would call a hypnotic state. That's where the brain waves begin to slow down. So everyone right now is probably in a beta state of consciousness. As you go into hypnosis, you move through alpha, theta, and then sometimes even into delta, and the brain waves begin to slow down. Meditation does the same thing. It slows the brain waves down. Now, the cool thing about hypnosis is that while you're in that state, the doorway to your subconscious mind is open. And so if you fill it at that point with affirmations, with suggestions, hypnotic suggestions, or other kinds of positive messages that are worded properly, it will begin to be absorbed by the subconscious mind. And that's how a lot of the that's kind of the 30,000 foot view of how most of the tracks I have on my YouTube channel. And those of you who haven't subscribed already, please do. It's BlueSky Hypnosis. That's how they work. They largely help you enter a state of hypnosis. Sleep is actually a state of hypnosis. And then while you're there, it delivers those messages to you. Think of it as like seeds going onto fertile soil. So thanks for making that comment. Let's see here. Sandra says, I could have run. I was so afraid he wouldn't love me. It was the only father figure I knew. Okay. So I think I probably missed something else that you said, but it sounds like there's a lot of pain from the past, a lot of things that are kind of pulling you back or dragging you back. And my approach to that, and it's just me, so again, take that with a grain of salt, would be to find those key areas in the past and resolve them. Now, one of the things to keep in mind is, to the subconscious mind, everything is now. Everything is now. There is no past, present, and future. Everything is now, which is what, incidentally, quantum physicists say about the universe. They say that there is no past, there is no time. That time is an illusion created by a planet rotating on its own axis and then circling the sun. That's what creates time. That's what creates day and night. That's what creates seasons. And just outside of that orbit, there is no time. So it's kind of interesting to me that the subconscious mind, this inherent part of us as humans, also has no time. And I often think that when we are in the province of our subconscious mind, we are in the quantum field. So, when you're in love and it feels like you've been with your beloved for 30 minutes and it turns out the sun's going down and it's been 4 hours, or you watch a movie and you're totally absorbed by the movie and the movie ends and you're like, that was 2 hours? And you're like, yep, okay, well that felt like 20 minutes to me. That there's this time distortion in hypnosis because you're operating the province of the subconscious mind and there is no time there. Now, the negative side of that would be that old wounds and traumas that occurred in the past, to the subconscious mind, it's like it's happening right now. And that's why part of the benefit of doing a past life regression or a present life regression is it helps that part of the mind to differentiate and understand, that's over there, I'm here, that's now put to rest because we do certain things, and I'm safe now to be me and move forward to take down the walls of that castle. Okay. Here we go. Looks like Creative. Oh, I love that name. Creative Guru. Stress has been my baseline most of my life. I had no idea what stress was from childhood. Now I have fibromyalgia. How do I get my body to learn to relax, especially when it hasn't really ever known that state? That's a fantastic question. And I guess one of the things I think about here is I think about the law of inertia. So the law of inertia states a body in motion tends to stay in motion. Now, if you've been in constant stress for a certain amount of time, as you say, that becomes your baseline. And that particular body, that stressful body that's in motion, in the stress motion, tends to stay in motion. So we would want to be able to interrupt that pattern. That's a neuro-linguistic programming concept, to create a pattern interrupt. Now, for a lot of people, when they're either in my office or I'm working with them one-on-one online, what they will say to me after the first time we do hypnosis is I will ask them, I always ask this question, I say, how does your body feel right now? Because I think, and a lot of people talk about this, that the body reveals the truth, right? Our mind can be all over the place, but the body will tell you if you feel stress, if you feel anger, if you feel exhilaration, if you feel relaxation, if you feel stimulation, right? The body will tell you that. And then there's certain parts of the body where that feeling will be more intense, perhaps, than it might be in other parts of the body. So I always ask the question, how do you feel? Tell me how you feel right now. And invariably, people will say, whoa, I feel relaxed. And I'll say, okay, cool, that's awesome. When's the last time you felt that relaxed? Was it an hour ago? Was it a few days, weeks, months? Or was it years? Or can't you remember? And a vast majority of people will say either it's been years or they can't remember the last time they felt like that. And I think that this interrupts the pattern that we're talking about, that body in motion tends to stay in motion. We're interrupting that. And it reminds the subconscious mind and the conscious mind what that actually feels like. And so now a person has a sense of that contrast between the way they always are, which starts to feel normal, of course, and what real and deep relaxation actually feels like. And the only way to really achieve that is to help the subconscious mind understand that it is now safe. So one of the things that I will do with people is I will ask them, where is your favorite place outdoors you've ever been or you ever imagine being? Beach, lake, river, desert, mountains, meadow, and so forth. And what I want is I want that Pavlovian connection. So Pavlovian connection means you have something over here. It could be a noise, it could be a smell. And then you got something over here, which is like an emotion or a feeling, right? So if a certain song plays on the radio and you get that really nice nostalgic feeling that washes over you, or you feel real happy or something, that's because you have a Pavlovian connection. This is named after Pavlov's dog, Ivan Pavlov, that most people have had if you've been to college, Psych 101. And those two things come together like this, right? So I want that for people. I want to harness what they already have. And maybe they've only been to that place once, but when I help them go there in their mind, when I help them go there in hypnosis, and then I make suggestions that they are safe, it's safe to relax, it's okay for their muscles to become heavy, that it starts to tell the subconscious mind, it is safe to relax, even if it's only for a short amount of time. And that's something else that happens sometimes, is that there's almost like a negotiation that occurs, where a person, let's say for the sake of argument, is not willing to let go of something because it feels familiar to them. Maybe it feels safe. It would be like asking a knight, like a knight in armor, to let go of his shield. Well, if he thinks he's going to be fighting, he doesn't want to let go of the shield. But if maybe you said to the knight, look, I can't see any enemies anywhere around us. How about if I just hold this shield for you for 30 seconds while you close your eyes and just smell the flowers that are all around you? The person would probably be willing to do that. So that's what we will often do. Now, getting back to your original point about how do I do this? How do I break this pattern? How do I help my body feel more relaxed? Well, the first thing I would suggest is go onto my channel on YouTube, BlueSky Hypnosis, and just peruse around there. The one that I would suggest to you right away is a track called Mind Massage. It's about 45 minutes. It guides you into hypnosis, and it's almost, the idea when I created it was like having a virtual massage. And in your mind, it's happening on a beach, and there's an ancient temple and so forth, and there's a lot of imagery around safety and so forth. There's also something called binaural tones. If you use headphones or earbuds, it means that in one ear you get a slightly different frequency than goes in the other. You're not consciously going to be aware of those frequencies, but they are designed to help you relax even deeper. So give that one a shot. Mind Massage on the YouTube channel, which is called BlueSky Hypnosis. And I'll put my little thing up there in case anybody wants to subscribe to that channel. And I think that one might help you quite a bit with that. All right, let's see what else we have here. Okay, here's AW. Hey, welcome AW. I was thinking about your initials today, and I was realizing when I was a kid, maybe they're still around the country, there were these places called A&W Root Beer. And I remember one time, it's one of my, you know how you get those really early memories of being a kid? Like you could be, I don't know, I think I must have been like 3 or 4 years old. And it's kind of wild where you can have these very snapshotty kind of memories. And I remember driving across the country with my parents. I was super thirsty. This is before air conditioning in cars, so it gives you an idea of how old I am. And I wanted an A&W root beer. So every time I see your name, I'm going to think about root beer. So A&W says, I remember having these profound thoughts when I was a child that I wasn't taught by anyone in school, that there is no time and we cannot have light without shade. Wow, that's cool. All right, so this is what that gets me thinking about, which is children have just come from what many spiritual people think is our permanent home. Maybe even religious people. So they might call it heaven or Eden or Valhalla or the life between lives or the afterlife or, you know, a million other names. And children come from this place. It's like they die to that place to be born to this place. And they're coming, I think, with a much fresher memory of the truth of how everything is constructed and operates. And that as we get older, like waking from a dream at night, that dream begins to fade. Now, it doesn't go away. You just kind of lose your conscious access to it. And there's a man named Ian Stevenson who did a tremendous amount of research on children who have past life experiences. So he would collect these stories and then he would seek to validate them. And it's absolutely fascinating because so many of the stories they're actually able to validate. Now, how does a 3-year-old kid gonna have details about a life that they lived 50 or 150 years earlier that then check out? So it kind of sounds like that to me. It sounds like you had, you were still holding on to some of the dream that you had last night, and you held on to enough of it that you could articulate it. And maybe you had parents that didn't discourage this in you. And if that's the case, you're super lucky. So thanks for the comment. Okay, so okay, here's Musical Mind says, I did all your methods to get into a PLR. It didn't work, but I appreciate your help. All right, so one thing that I would suggest to you, if you didn't, maybe you've done it already, is go watch the pendulum video. It teaches you how to use a pendulum, which is an ideomotor tool. Ask, once you've calibrated the pendulum and you know what yes, no, and maybe is, and that it's a good time for you to ask questions, ask, do I have a block to accessing my past lifetimes? If you get a yes to that, which chances are it's going to be a yes if the pendulum's working for you, then ask, is that block based upon fear? Is it based upon disbelief? And start walking down that road and narrowing down where that block is. Because those are the two big ones. It could be fear and disbelief. I've seen other ones, but those are the two major ones. So if you haven't done that already, I would highly recommend you try that. And send me an email and feel free to flesh it out, and I'll see if I can help you a little bit more. Marie Hogan, I'm about 5 miles below the foothills, so I'm safe. But it was literally raining ashes here yesterday. Can't see the mountains. Can't go outside. Too smoky. Oh, Marie, I hope you are going to be okay and all that, and that you evacuate if necessary. Veronica Cruz, she says, Peter, listening to your losing weight video during sleep, I had a very intense physical reaction, almost like an anxiety attack. I had to stop it after a few minutes. It stopped. It was a surprise. Okay, so thank you for telling me that, and it kind of leads into perfectly, actually, a perfect segue into another point that I had talked about in the promo for this, and that is dreams. So quite a few people, if you read through the comments, will describe having extremely vivid dreams when they are listening to the 8-hour sleep hypnosis for weight loss. Now these, and there are some audible ones, but they're primarily subliminal. So what this means is that the listener is only hearing nature sounds like rain, or it could be the ocean, or it could be a waterfall, or they're hearing kind of innocuous instrumental music. That's here. Below it would be the subliminal messages. So subliminal or subaudible. Here's where you can hear things. It's tuned down here and it's masked by the music or by the nature sounds, so the conscious mind can't make it out. But the subconscious mind, which has this incredible power, right? It does 97% of your brain's processing power, can extract all of those messages while you're sleeping. This is clearly causing these people, the ones that wrote in, it's not everybody at all by any means, but a lot of people, to have these vivid dreams. Some of those people have nightmares. Now, there is something that I program in on a lot of these tracks, and the exact phrase goes like this: you are now safe to release the old weight. So that phrase, if you think about it, can have a couple of meanings. So one meaning could be if you're 30 pounds overweight, you're now safe to release that old physical weight. The second meaning clearly is you're now safe to release the old emotional weight. And it seems like one of the purposes of dreams is to do just that, is to flush out the old toxins. So it could be an old trauma, and maybe through revisiting something in the subconscious mind while you're sleeping in the form of a dream, or you dream something that might be a metaphor. And remember, this could be not just from earlier in your present lifetime, but it could also be from a past lifetime. The person can experience, what we would call a nightmare, for example. And remember when I said that I look at all of this, old traumas, and I see in my mind's eye like an arrow or several arrows sticking out of a person. And remember I said that when you find that arrow and you pull it out, it hurts? Well, it does. In hypnosis, person might be crying, they might be feeling anxiety while we're taking, metaphorically speaking, taking that arrow out and then healing that underlying wound. Well, it seems to me the same thing is happening from time to time with certain people in their sleep world, in their sleep life. And one of the things that I would suggest to you, Veronica, is maybe try, just as an experiment, try some of the other tracks, because they all have different programming on them. The other thing, and this has to be obviously entirely up to you, is what would happen if you just kept listening? Like, would you just keep having bad dreams every single night? Or at a certain point, would all of the junk be cleared out and now you'd move right through it? This is a really, I actually, it's gonna sound crazy, but I feel lucky in a sense that I was diagnosed with leukemia in 2003, because it led me from an allopathic, oncologist physician whom I saw twice, and they said, we don't know why you have it, and we don't know how to cure it. That's why I left. And I found my way to a naturopathic physician. And their concept, in this case, it was a she, her concept was, there's trash inside of you. There's toxic material inside of you, and we don't want it to stay in, we want it to go out. One of the detox protocols she had me doing was doing saunas. And I remember that at one point, while doing the sauna, I started getting these like hives all over my chest and stomach while I was sitting in the sauna, these big welts that were itchy and red. And I called her up and I said, what the heck is going on? And she said, the toxic material is coming out of your body. Your skin is your largest organ. It's so toxic that it's reacting on the surface of your skin and creating those welts. And what she said was, keep going. And there are other medical professionals that would say the exact opposite. Stop or take steroids. And I'm not in a position to tell you what to do because, as I said, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a doctor. I'm just talking about different philosophies, different ways of approaching things. And I think that helped teach me that philosophy, which is sometimes things have to get worse in order to get better. And we all know this. If you drink too much tequila, you're going to throw up. And the throwing up is a horrible experience. The preamble is horrible, and then it's a horrible experience when it's actually occurring. You think you're going to die. But when you're done, you feel like 100 times better because your body has naturally, it has this natural capability. It wants to purge all of those old poisons and toxins. And I think it's the same with the emotional poisons, with the emotional toxins. I think our mind wants to purge those. And when it's given an opportunity to do that, I think it does it. And one of the mechanisms, I think, is through sleep. So I hope that has potentially shed some light on that. And I'm really grateful for you bringing that up because it was an absolutely perfect segue into this. Okay. People talking about liking the white noise videos. Yeah, I'm starting to make more of those because it's music is really, people are understandably have different tastes. And especially with music, what one person absolutely adores, another person hates. And I really did think I was onto something when I started making, like waterfall sounds or rain. And then some people said that they don't like the sound of rain. And I wrote back and said, well, what happens when it actually does rain? And they were like, well, I don't sleep very well. So nothing's going to please everyone. And that's why I try to make a variety of different, take a variety of different approaches to meet as many people as possible. Yeah, AW is saying yes, that she felt like she knew more then, and we just forget more as we become adults. And I think that's exactly like waking up from a dream. And when you first wake up, before you actually move your body, that dream is right there. And that as you step up out of bed, as you go brush your teeth, that thing just fades away. And I think that's kind of what it seems like happens when we incarnate into this lifetime. And the cool thing about hypnosis, especially hypnotic regression, whether you're regressing to a past life or you're regressing to earlier in this lifetime, is that those memories are not really gone. They're just buried deep down. And by going into hypnosis, it's almost like it opens up a channel and you can begin to extract some of these memories that have always been there. They've just been kind of hidden, as it were. Oh, this is great. Shannon Marie says, what's the best question to ask our pendulums to find the core fear of losing weight? Okay, so the first thing I think you might do after you, again, calibrate the pendulum, you're going to be sure of what yes is, sure of what no is, sure of what maybe is. It's a good time to ask questions. Your higher self is controlling the pendulum for your highest and greatest good. You got all that. Perfect. Maybe you even ask a question. You say, is water wet? If you get your yes to that, we're in good shape. You want to ask, is my subconscious mind trying to protect me by holding on to additional weight? If you get a yes to that, now we want to find out, okay, what is it trying to protect you from? And you could say, the next question could be, is it related to a trauma that I suffered in the past? If you get a yes to that, now we'd want to know, okay, well, when did that happen? So you could first ask, was that a trauma that occurred in my present life? Let's just say for the sake of argument, you get a no. Was that a trauma that occurred in a past life? Let's see, you get a yes to that one. Okay. Then the next question would be, is it in my highest and best interest to go visit that past lifetime so I can remember what happened so I will know how to heal it? You're either going to get a yes or no to that. And if you get a yes, then it's up to you. Do I want to go do a past life regression video, or do I want to work with me or somebody else to go and try to find that one? But you want to try to isolate it. So you're starting with everything is possible, and then you just sort of logically start whittling it down. I also learned this technique from the same naturopathic physician who would use kinesiology or muscle testing to determine what's going on with your body and then what supplement or remedy would work for you. So let's just say, for the sake of example, because I think it kind of works with these questions, that you have a cabinet and there's 500 different kinds of homeopathic remedies in that cabinet, for example, other kinds of remedies, and it's got shelves in it. Well, she would say, is the remedy, or are the remedies that will solve this problem in that cabinet? If she got a yes, she would just say, okay, is it in the top half of the cabinet or the bottom half? And you have to phrase it differently, like, is the remedy in the top half? Let's say it goes no. All right, I'm going to say, is it in the bottom half? You get a yes. Is it on the left side? Or is it on the right side? Is it in the front and the back? So she could quickly narrow down from all of these different possibilities to a very finite group of what it could be. And that's how I think when I'm using a pendulum, or I'm talking, through a client to their spirit guide to try to figure out what the origin of their problem or their issue is to start from that large and then figure out how to whittle it down. So if you got a yes to, it's a trauma that occurred in your present life, you could then ask, is it a trauma that occurred before the age of 10 years old? So you immediately, if you get a no, well, it's after 10. If you get a yes, okay, now I'm only in a 10-year range, and if the person's 50 years old, I've just whittled it down to 20% of their lifespan. Then you could say, did it happen before the age of 5? And in that way, you could get right to the precise age. And sometimes when that happens, the person will remember, oh, wait a second, such and such a thing happened to me when I was 6 years old. My parents got divorced. And then you can ask the pendulum, is the trauma that created this condition of excess weight related to my parents getting divorced? Hope that makes sense. Awesome question. I really appreciate that one. And this is a kind of example. If you didn't ask that, I never would have gone here. And I think it really, it can add for certain people. So thank you. So Amy Mulling says, so nightmares get rid of old bad stuff. My theory is yes. That is what I have found in my practice. That is what I think I am finding in this now much larger universe of the YouTube channel, with literally millions of people, experiencing these tracks, and then a tiny percentage of them writing in, but it's still way more than one person could see one-on-one, in a lifetime. So yeah, I think that's exactly what's happening. There's a quote. Let's see. I wonder if I can do this while I'm doing the broadcast. But there's this really, really cool quote, and I think I can pull it up if you guys can hang on just 1 second here. Yeah, here it is. So this is from, it was like a publishing company that publishes spiritual books. And they send out this email, and this email floated across my screen, and I just thought, that's it. That's exactly what's happening. So the quote is, I'll put on my glasses here. A bad dream can be a strong indication that the positive and loving messages and affirmations on the track are colliding with something dark and negative in your subconscious mind. So those are my words. Now here's the quote. The quote is, through this energetic release of powers, the bad dream, a karma in the soul can be dissolved. If it is a minor soul burden, it may flow out in dreams while sleeping. Therefore, don't worry about unpleasant and upsetting dreams. It can be that a cleansing of the soul takes place in this way. This is from Recognize and Heal Yourself through the power of the Spirit, which is from Gabrielle Publishing House. I think that's exactly what's happening. Incidentally, that's what my naturopath thought too. She called it a venting dream. So on the physical side, in my case, I got you got rashes, and then as I kept doing the sauna, other people said, no, stop that. She said, keep going. So I kept going, and these large welts turned into smaller welts, and the smaller welts turned into like these little pinprick ones, and then I kept doing it, and then it went away entirely. And then I noticed, that even before I had been diagnosed with leukemia, when I would be mowing the lawn in the summer, hot day, or I'd be playing golf in the summer on a hot day, wearing a hat, that my forehead would like get crazy itchy when I would perspire. Well, after I went through all the detox, I could sweat all I want, and my forehead didn't itch anymore. So clearly what was happening is that my body was purging a small amount of those toxins that was creating that itchy feeling. That when I really did it in earnest, created all of the welts. And as I say, she had the same philosophy. She called it a venting drain. So in the way your body gets rid of toxins, say through the different channels of elimination, that your mind is getting rid of things through those kinds of dreams. So yeah, I think that's one of the purposes of dreams. I can't prove that. That's just my opinion. Oh boy. How do we go back to this? Trying to go back to our big screen here. Oh, nice. Okay, got it. Woohoo! All right, so thank you for that. And let's see. I want to make sure that we get to everything that I said we were going to do. So, the other one is, and we'll get rid of this guy and put up this one. So I've used this photograph before, because I think it's kind of a cute photograph, and it represents a herd. Now, the other big concept here, and it has to do with safety and protection, so we're back to our friend the subconscious mind, is that in order to feel safe, when anything scary is happening, what do we want? We want to be with other people because there's safety in numbers, we say. You know, we feel safer when we are with the herd. If an animal like this, and I don't know if those are deer or, well, it kind of looks like a deer. If it gets hurt or if it gets spooked by something, it's going to want to be with the rest of the herd because that's where safety is found. And for us, when we're children, it's especially true. If we get scared, we're going to want to be with other people, in particular our parents. Now, here's where it comes into kind of the negative side, if you will, with weight loss. If your friends, if the people in your family, if the people you work with are big and heavy people, then when you start to lose weight, the subconscious mind will go, hold on a second, wait a minute, you're not fitting in anymore. You're actually standing out. And standing out is not a safe place to be. We want you to fit in. And so that can be a reason why subconsciously, when a person starts to lose weight, their subconscious mind says, that's not okay. And the weight comes back on. You know, there's a person in my family who has talked about how, you know, earlier in life, this idea came into the mind, which was, if I don't perform at a high enough level, nobody's gonna like me or love me, want to be with me. If I perform at too high a level, no one's gonna like me, love me, want to be with me. And so in the mind is this limiting belief that behaves like a thermostat. And it always keeps the temperature at roughly 55 degrees. It's never going to go down to 30 degrees and the pipes aren't going to freeze. That's cool. But the person's always going to be cold because as it gets to 55, 56, 57 degrees, the thermostat says, shut off the furnace. Keep it in that band. And this can apply to athletic success, business success. It can apply to money and wealth. It can apply to your physical weight. It's even a scientific fact that if a person has large and heavy friends, they are statistically much more likely to be large and heavy. And I'm sure there are a variety of reasons for that. I'm just talking about the one right here that applies to safety, right? That it's not safe to be sticking up, you know, above all of the other poppies, because that's the one that gets cut off. You know, that's away from the herd, that's not the safe place to be. And I've described it on this Friday Live before as, you know, that feeling that most of us would get if you went to a black tie wedding. You didn't know it was a black tie wedding, and for whatever reason you showed up in the quote unquote wrong clothes. You know, you're wearing cutoffs and a Hawaiian shirt. You know, you'd feel pretty conspicuous. You know, or if everybody was in you know, luau clothes and you show up in a tuxedo or in a formal ball gown, you'd probably feel a little weird. You'd feel a little out of place. That's because there's part of us that really wants to be part of the herd, because that's where safety is found. And I'm not telling you to go get new friends. I guess what I'm saying is that when you become aware of this, and you start programming yourself, it's okay for me to be different. It's okay for me to be unique. It's okay for me to be successful. It is safe for me to do all of these things. And keep, you know, through some of these tracks that I have and through other methods, train, retrain, re-educate your subconscious mind that now you are safe to live the life you want to live. So that it doesn't think as soon as you start getting there, this is no good. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's see what else we have here. Okay, so somebody's asking here, if they get dreams when they listen to the audio, are they weak-minded? So this is kind of an old canard. The old canard about hypnosis was that only weak-minded people could be hypnotized. That's not true. Hypnosis is a state of focused concentration where selective thinking is employed. So if you can guide somebody into a kind of laser-like focus, they are now in hypnosis. And once they're in hypnosis, you can induce their subconscious mind to accept an idea that the conscious mind wouldn't accept. For example, it's July in upstate New York, and it's, call it August, and it's 90 degrees outside, and the stage hypnotist is suggesting to the volunteer that came up on the stage that it's actually February and that it's 13 degrees and that they're very, very cold because they're just wearing a short sleeve shirt. That person, if they go into hypnosis, focused state of concentration, and then accept this idea, the subconscious mind accepts this idea because the conscious mind isn't in the way anymore, saying, no, that's not true. If it accepts this new idea, that person will start shivering. That doesn't mean that they're weak-minded or weak-willed. It means they're very, very good at concentrating. They're very, very good at focusing. And everyone can go into a hypnotic state. Everyone. You know, we all are subjected to all kinds of subconscious persuasion and influence all the time. I mean, one of the funny things, actually, is the advertising industry. So the advertising industry brings in literally billions of dollars every year from manufacturers, from retailers and so forth. Those companies are not idiots. They know that those dollars are well spent. And it's not to educate someone as to, you know, what a superior shoe Nike makes. That's not why they say just do it. No, they're not trying to inform or teach you about the specific mechanical engineering merits of the shoe. They are trying to move you, persuade you emotionally. And most people think, I'm not persuaded by any of these things. You know, we're all walking around saying we're not persuaded by commercials, and yet billions and billions and billions of dollars are spent by companies that do a ton of research to see if it works, and it does every single year. So we are all subjected to unconscious, subconscious persuasion and influence. And it's certainly not about being weak-willed or weak-minded. I would say it has more to do with what you expose yourself to. So the more you expose yourself to different kinds of stimuli, you know, the books you read, what are you reading? The television shows you watch, what are you watching? What's on your you know, your handheld? What stores do you walk into? What kind of schooling and education did you have? It's all influencing you deeply. I mean, think about this. Think about being, I don't know, like 5 years old. 5 years old. And in this country, reciting, you know, standing up in class every day, mind you, at the beginning of the day, facing the American flag and reciting the pledge, which is basically like an oath or a contract, the Pledge of Allegiance. You're 5 years old. What do you know about different countries and what this country stands for and all these things? But you're pledging allegiance, right, at that age. And it's repeated over and over and over again. And people are doing that, I'm sure, in other countries too. But this is something that can affect people deeply, so that decades later, when something comes up about the flag, people get all upset about it. And in part, not the only reason, but in part is because there's been this inculcation from the earliest ages, which is part of influence and persuasion. And I, you know, it's a long way of saying I think we're all subjected to this through a variety of methods, never more so than at this stage of history. You know, if you go back 150 years, you don't have anywhere near the amount of information that's coming at you in all different ways that has been studied up one side and down the other. The effect of color, you know, the color red actually increases your heartbeat, right? It causes you to make impulsive decisions. And when this is lined up with certain kinds of music and subliminal influences and the things that are being said overtly and maybe frequencies, it becomes a very powerful package, especially when it's delivered over and over again. So thanks for pointing that out. I appreciate being able to talk about that. Soft breezy day. What are you saying, soft breezy? Do you have a phrase that, like that in the 8-hour stop smoking, put it on because it had such a beautiful video and rain sounds, but slept badly and have had some daytime anxiety? So what I would suggest for you is do the Audible one. There's a 45, no, I think it's a little bit over an hour. It's like 1 hour and 6 minutes, a stop smoking one that's Audible. Just listen to that one, see what happens. You know, that one is very powerful. You can hear everything on it. Give that a shot and see what happens. If you feel anxiety when you listen to that one, then there's probably something about you that is linking cigarette smoking or stopping cigarette smoking with something bad. And we would have to figure out how to help you analyze what that could possibly be. But there's quite a few things that it could be. So that's my suggestion on that one. Creative guru. Thank you. She or he is talking about. We had talking about the leukemia diagnosis, which is kind of funny. Marie Hogan says it's all good, Peter. Rain and music. Amy Muffling says a light thunderstorm is relaxing. Is relaxing sound. I listened to several of what Peter has recorded. I like waves the best. Yeah, I think I'm leaning towards the nature sounds because we're exposed to those anyway, and they've been around literally since before we were around, and I think that there's got to be something good to that. So I'll probably be doing more of those in the future. I'll still do some with music because some people prefer that, but I appreciate your input there. Yeah, here's a good point. Gia Girl says, I love to forget painful memories. It's a blessing, but I really don't forget. I just bury the memories that are not ever forgotten. I think that's a really, really good point. People will say to me sometimes when we're going to be working one-on-one, I'm not sure that I want to go back to those things that happened in the past. I'm not sure I want to dredge those things up with the idea, and this is a very common idea, that it'll just make things worse. And what I say is, it's like having poison inside of you. That poison, like I was saying, that sort of itchy thing that happened on my forehead, in the summer when I would perspire and wear a hat. And God knows what else. I think the leukemia diagnosis probably had a lot to do with all of these poisons and toxins inside of me. It's a lot of times we're not linking, an old trauma with something that's going on in our life right now. We're not drawing a bright line between those two things because they seem unrelated. But if it turns out that they are related, then it could be that you or I or another person is suffering in all of these myriad ways at maybe a low level every single day for decades. Whereas if we just go in once, we find the thing and we resolve it, they're like, whew, that was intense, but I feel so much better. So yeah, I totally agree with you. Debbie Tucker is saying, my childhood was traumatic. What kind of regression should I try to clear all those issues up in addition to the weight loss meditation? All right, so here's I have not tried to do a self-guided, made for the general population, regress on purpose in this lifetime to, say, a childhood trauma, because it just feels unethical to me to do that. It might work, but it's not like I'm there to sort of intervene if the person starts, we call it abreacting, really kind of freaking out or whatever, to help that person, even before they get to that point, keep it sort of calmer and still work through it. So I haven't really wanted to do that. I don't know if I'll ever do that. So I have put out these other ones, and it does help a lot of people. You can read the comments. I mean, it's incredible. If that's not really getting at it, if that's not really working, one of the things that I would suggest is do one of the spirit guide tracks. So a spirit guide is kind of like, is a non-physical being, entity, like a mentor or a wise and loving teacher. In session, when I work with people one-on-one, I always have them meet the guide first. Establish that connection. Well, go to a place where they already feel comfortable. I talked about that Pavlovian response of feeling comfortable, safe, protected. then meet the guide, same kind of feelings there. And then I have them ask the guide, did this problem begin in the past life or in the present life? And the answer comes through the client then tells me from the guide. So on the tracks where you're working with the guide, it may be that the guide actually leads you back to some of that, but it's not going to say the guide takes you back to a trauma earlier in your present life. So you could try working with the guide and see what happens. You could also, use a pendulum and determine if particular traumas that you're aware of are related to some of the issues that you're dealing with now. If in some of these mechanisms, like you could do the mind massage one that's really going to try to keep moving you into that parasympathetic mode of the autonomic nervous system, which is the rest and digest. It's the opposite of stress. Those things could help you a lot. If it's not enough, then you might want to work with me or someone like me, or work with a psychotherapist, especially if you're able to identify what the trauma is. I mean, there are good licensed psychotherapists that are doing EMDR, which is rapid eye movement, in order to take some of the edge, as it were, off of trauma that's happened in the past. So if you, again, know what the trauma is, maybe you just know, or you've used a pendulum, or the guides told you, that might be an option for you. So I hope that helps a little bit. And again, feel free to reach out if my answer wasn't quite sufficient for you. All right. Let's see, what else do we have standing out? We got that dreams. So past lifetime, we'll just talk about that one briefly. A past lifetime, what happens in a past lifetime, like a trauma, could still be informing your present lifetime, because you're taking that energy with you from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. And if it doesn't get resolved, this could explain, I'm not saying it does, I'm saying it could explain why people are born with certain likes, certain dislikes. They're born with certain skills and capabilities, and they're born with certain kinds of fears and phobias, even if they've never had exposure to that particular kind of stimulus. So an example of a past lifetime would be a person died of starvation. Well, the subconscious mind isn't going to let that happen again, and so they're going to pack on extra weight. So if there's a sudden shortage of food, the person's not going to starve again. That could be an example of the subconscious mind wanting to protect that person. And if the person doesn't have any concept of past lives, they don't believe in them or whatever, but that's really where it's coming from, that could be a major issue that they simply won't be able to completely get over. They'd have to just manage it. It could be something where they envied people with money, because there was a time in the past where being heavy was considered to be a high status symbol, and being thin was a sign of being impoverished. So they may have been in this place of envy and wanting to be like rich people. And that might be why that they're gaining that kind of weight. Maybe they were harmed in a past lifetime. Different kinds of assaults. And the subconscious mind, which has no conception of time, remember, it's kind of like in the quantum field, says, we're not going to let that happen again. So let's put on this extra weight so we have a barrier between us and the outside world. And so maybe the perception is we're not as attractive, so we can fly underneath the radar. Again, we're not going to stick out. Remember that concept? That if a person is considered to be really beautiful, it's like they rise above and they're standing out. If they're a great athlete, if they have a super successful business, if they make a lot of money, they're standing out. And that could be perceived by the subconscious mind as not being safe. And so here comes the weight. Here comes the business that was doing pretty well, and now it's gonna take a hit. The athletic career that looks so promising, and then the person just fell apart. These are all reasons, potential reasons why that could happen. And the origin of that, so I always think about the word the origin. What is the origin? Not an iteration, but when was that created for the first time? Was it created earlier in this life or in a past life? And a past life is a definite possibility. And so that's something that I think is always important to explore. Now, a person could also have feelings of unworthiness. They could feel, for whatever reason, that they don't deserve to be wealthy, or they don't deserve to be healthy, or they don't deserve to let their true beauty shine, or to be, thin. That maybe they did something, or they were persuaded that they were a bad person. And so it's almost like a form of self-punishment. That could be another reason why the subconscious mind is holding on to weight, for example, along with some of the other issues. All right, so before we go into the next thing, I just wanted to talk about, because what I'd like to do is I'd like to talk just a little bit more about, so how do you feel safe? Like, what do you have to do in order to feel safe? I want to talk about that before we conclude today. And I want to just mention what we're going to be doing next week, which is, this comes from Dara. I think it's Dara O'Sullivan or Sullivan. So Dara had suggested this a number of weeks back. I want to say maybe 8 weeks back. He had said he would love to revisit the topic of spirit guides, which we've sort of touched on briefly today, in much greater detail. And he gave me some ideas of some things that he would like to go a little bit deeper in. Now, I know that some of the people on that Friday Live at 5, next Friday, which I guess is going to be the 18th, won't have any concept of spirit guides. So rest assured, we'll be covering some of that too. We'll do some of the basics of what a guide is and how you meet a guide and why you would want to do that. And then we'll go into some of the deeper aspects of spirit guides and some of the questions that he had suggested and some of the things that I think would be cool to bring up on the list of topics. All right, so what do you do in order to feel safe? Well, hypnosis is considered to be a state of hyper learning, which is for me, it was a really cool way of thinking about what hypnosis is. Hypnosis is a state of hyper learning. Now, all children up until the ages of between 7 and 9 are in a full-time state of hypnosis. We say children are like sponges, they absorb everything, right? Their minds are wide open. That's a hypnotic state. They are in a state of hyper learning, which from an evolutionary standpoint makes perfect sense, because it would make sense to get children, especially when we were living in caves, but even now when they can put their fingers in a light socket, to learn what's going to kill them and what's going to keep them alive as rapidly as possible. That would be the best thing from an evolutionary standpoint. And so it makes sense that they would be in that state of hyperlearning. And as I've said before, this is why, if you, AW, I don't know how old you are, but let's just say you're, it's such a bad idea to say how old a woman is, but let's just say you're 30. If you're, 30 years old, and I'm my age, which is 58, and we want to learn to speak Italian, assuming you don't already speak Italian, which maybe you do. If we wanted to learn to speak Italian and there were a 5-year-old in the room with us and she wanted to learn to speak Italian too, guess who's learning first? That's right, the 5-year-old, because they're in a state of hyper-learning all the time. So when you do work in traditional hypnosis, and most of my tracks are based on traditional hypnosis, some of them are based on regression. You are entering a hypnotic state, so the subconscious mind opens wide, and now it's able to receive a new way of thinking in a much more efficient way than when you are in the state you're in right now, which is in a beta state of consciousness. So you essentially, in order to feel safe, you want to re-educate your subconscious mind and keep reinforcing the idea that it's safe for you to lose weight. That's why that one phrase that I love so much, that I think is actually kicking off a lot of those dreams, you are now safe to release the old heavy weight. That's why I think that, it's one of the reasons why I think it's so powerful. It's because over time, that subconscious mind will begin to take on that idea. This is very much like advertising. So they say in advertising that repetition makes reputation. In other words, the more times you expose someone to an advertisement, the more likely they are to be persuaded by that advertisement and take action on it. One time, not so good. 7 times, there's something called the rule of 7 touches in sales, where that you have to have 7 contacts with a prospect before they'll be willing to really listen to you or buy something. It's not hard and fast, but that's been around for a long time, and there's truth to it. So repetition is a really important part I say to people when they're doing like the 8-hour sleep hypnosis, do two things. Number one, do the 8-hour sleep hypnosis, do it every night. Play it in the background. All you're gonna hear is the sound of rain, for example, or music. While you sleep, you're not having to carve out any extra time. And do one of the shorter 20-minute tracks during the day. Think of it as like a boost or a reinforcement. Now that's one you are gonna be able to hear. And do these two things every day and do it for at least a month. Give it that amount of time. They say, depending on who you believe, that it takes 21 days to create a new habit. It takes 30 days to create a new habit. It takes, somewhere around that time, or the numbers that are bandied about. That's part of what we want to do, a habit. We want something to become an unconscious competence. When you learn to tie your shoes, you had to think about every little thing that you were doing, tying the bow and wrapping it around and pulling it tight. And at some point, through repetition, it became an unconscious competence. We want you to be unconsciously competent in your mind that you are safe to lose weight. And one of the most straightforward ways of doing this is through repetition while you're in a state of hyperlearning, all of which these tracks will accomplish for you. The other way of doing that is what we've been talking about today, which is healing the old trauma that caused it in the first place. So if, like some of the people that commented today, you get to this point, like Debbie, you get to this point where you feel like, hey, I've tried some of these other things and it's made some positive improvements, but it's not where I want it to be. That's when you might want to work with an individual practitioner and work with that individual practitioner to find the origin of these issues and then heal, resolve, or neutralize them where they live, like pull the weed out by its roots. And then the last thing is what I'm going to call to take appropriate action. Now, I can't tell you what appropriate action is. Only you can decide what appropriate action is. But what I mean by this is that, they say if you fall off a horse, the old time wisdom was you got to get back on the horse, because if you don't, that fear is like going to set. It's going to harden inside of you, and then it's going to be really hard to get on the horse. Maybe you'll never get back on it. So, in a way, the way I think about this, so just me, I'm not telling you what to do, but the way I think about this is taking appropriate action, meaning start to challenge the fear. Start to challenge it. Start asking yourself questions like, is it really true that I'm not safe? Is it really true that I am fill in the blanks with some of the things that you might say about yourself that aren't kind? If a person's afraid to speak in public, what does Toastmasters do? Toastmasters is a controlled environment where people can take appropriate action to practice speaking in front of groups of people. People that in Toastmasters they get to know and they feel more comfortable with. And the more times they do this, the more their subconscious mind is going, well, the sky didn't fall when Susie got behind the lectern and talked to all those people in the audience. In fact, it was kind of enjoyable. And the more times that she does that, takes that appropriate action, I think the closer she gets to actually standing in front of a group of people she doesn't know and really giving a public speech, for real, if you will. Now, the cool thing about hypnosis is that you can do this in your mind. You don't actually have to stand on a stage in front of a bunch of people. You can do it in your mind. And if you do it there in a hypnotic state, your subconscious mind, which has no concept of time, and it has no distinction between what our conscious mind says that's real, fact, and that's false or fiction. It has no concept of that. That's why when you go to a movie and there's a chase scene, you're grabbing the armrests and your heart's starting to beat and you're dumping adrenaline and cortisol in your bloodstream because your subconscious mind doesn't know that's just a two-dimensional image on a screen. Conscious mind knows it, body doesn't know it. That's why we focus on the body. So the more in your mind, this is what people will call visualization, right? That I'm visualizing the outcome that I want. Well, the addition I will make to that is not everyone is visual. You have kinesthetic people who touch things, right? They like to manipulate and move things, and how does something feel? You also have auditory people. What does it sound like? So when you just say visualize it, you're going to miss people who are desperately trying to visualize something, but their mind really wants to hear it. Or they're trying to desperately visualize something, but their mind wants to feel what it's like. So be sure to allow those other senses to come into whatever you're doing in your imaginative process. if it's hypnosis, we utilize all of those things. So I hope that makes sense. I hope you guys will consider, showing up next Friday, live at 5, on Friday for the Spirit Guides in depth. I think that'll be a pretty cool presentation. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider doing that. Thank you so much for everybody who showed up today and made awesome comments, made as usual really great questions. I think I might take one or two more. Oh well, this one is like, this one is teed up. I have to do this one. Do you do personal sessions? Yes, I do personal sessions. So all the sessions I'm doing right now are Zoom based. With the COVID thing. I've been doing Zoom sessions for about 4 years of my 13-year career. I've got clients I've never met in person, face to face, and it works very, very well, even over Zoom. It kind of surprised me 4 years ago when I started it, but it's almost like it's almost just as good as being in person. I feel like I don't notice the difference. So yes, I do. And if you're interested in that, want to learn more about it, you can go to my website, which is BlueSkyHypnosis.com. I even do a 20-minute free, kind of introductory call if that's something you want to do. If you go under booking, you can either just book a session right there, an initial session, which is 90 minutes, or you can book a 20-minute free call if you want to do that, and we can just chat and see if it's something that you're interested in. So thank you for teeing that up. Let's see. It looks like Shannon. Oh, there's a whole bunch of questions down here. This is awesome. Shannon is saying, I'm kinesthetic, and oh my God, I used to get in trouble all the time as a kid because I wanted to touch everything. Yes. Okay, so check this out. Public school, formal education. Formal education is basically a realm of primarily visual people, secondarily auditory, and lastly kinesthetic. And so what is the thing we all experienced in high school? It is, some kids are just not cutting it academically. And where do they send them? They send them to the vocational technical school. And what do they get to do there? They get to use their hands. They're finally in a place that is sort of designed for them. But if the normal curriculum in a high school wasn't designed entirely by visual people, that rewards visual people, right? Who then go on to higher education, also visual, because they succeeded here, now they succeed here, and then they succeed there, and they become the people who administer the same visual system that then tell everyone to just, go the power of visualization. Yeah, visualization is powerful, but we're leaving out auditory and kinesthetic. And we don't want to do that because some people, their main representational systems are not visual. So yes, that's how I get it. That's how you learn. That makes perfect sense. And when you understand that, you realize there's nothing wrong with you. That's just your track. And if you understand that, certain things in your life will become much more clear and apparent why you're drawn to certain things, why you tend to excel at certain things and not others. And again, it's just like a square peg in a round hole. You get the two that fit together and everything's great. And if you understand that about yourself, then, I think you can be much more easy in your life, easier on yourself, and probably find more success. So really good point. Let's do one more, just because I love this. Let's see. I want to try to get somebody that I haven't... Hey, my son, look at this. My son, thank you, Henry. I got to call out my son. So he's doing his first semester in college, and he is in Athens, Greece. So Henry, thank you for tuning in. I hope you're doing great, and I love you. It's good to see you here. Janice Nicole says, thank you so much. I learned a lot from this tonight. Thank you, Janice, for tuning in, and I hope we see you back here again. There's Dara O'Sullivan. Thank you, Dara, for being the architect, if you will, for next week's Live at 5 on the Spirit Guide in Depth. Okay, so Shannon Marie is also saying that that she's never really present with her food. So that's another thing that I put on all these tracks, is I talk about both auditory and subliminally about, and this is again speaking to the subconscious mind, about how the subconscious mind now slows everything down when you're eating. Everything slows down. You become more present. And because everything is slowing down, and because you're more present, you actually enjoy it more. And because you're slowing it down and because you're more present, you are fully satisfied with 2/3 of what you used to eat. And a lot of people will say in the comments section, you know, I ate part of the whatever and I just didn't need anymore, and that's totally unusual for me. So yeah, I mean, this is called mindfulness now. You know, we're thinking we can be multitasking and doing 100 things at once, and that really doesn't work. And it's bad for our brains and it's bad for our bodies. So yeah, anything that helps us to focus and be present, because when we're focused and present, those are the high points in our lives. When we're in love, when we're reading a book or watching a movie or watching a play that we're totally absorbed by, we're not trying to do 5 other things. You know, professional basketball players don't have headsets on and they're talking to their wife about, you know, what to get at the grocery store and how, you know, their son did in school that day. And they're not trying to do that. They're fully present. And I noticed as a parent, when I tried to do other things and be with my kids, it was a complete disaster. When I focused just on them, it was just magical. So yeah, that's another really important point. So to everyone, again, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for subscribing to my channel. Shout out again to my son, Henry, in Athens, Greece. Can't wait to see you, but I know you're having a great time and can't wait to hear how things are going. And hope to see everybody back here next Friday, live at 5 for Spirit Guides in Depth. Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend. Bye.